Our name is Ghosts Want You Dead. In these terrifying times, we are compelled by forces beyond our control to turn our gaze to the past, a mysterious past which we have been privy to only in hazy glimpses until now. Our daunting journey begins. What new terrors might we uncover?
Hello, I'm Matthew.
Hi, I'm Rebekah.
We're old friends overwhelmed by the daily horrors of 2025. The natural reaction to that is to immerse ourselves in a 1960s soap opera. As elder millennial goth kids, we've had a passing awareness of the TV soap opera Dark Shadows, but never actually engaged with it. In our slapdash planning of this podcast about a week ago, our plan was to watch the entire series for the first time together and then talk about it with you. Now, I accidentally watched the first 260 episodes of the show in the last week on account of depression. With episodes running about 20 minutes, for now, we'll run through 5 episodes of the TV show per podcast, which would keep us going about 5 years. So get attached, but not too attached because there's an out date. Rebekah, are you a current or former soap opera viewer?
You know, I didn't watch much as a kid, but my mother enjoyed this very program we are delving into. And I do have fond memories of watching Passions and Days of Our Lives with you in my 20s. But that's the extent of my soap opera ing.
Fair enough. When I was a kid, my sister and I watched The Young and the Restless with our grandmother because that's just what happened in the house at 3 o'clock every weekday. And one summer, we added Days of Our Lives to the rotation around the time that Marlena was possessed by the devil because spooky things are fun. And then, of course, as you mentioned, I did watch Passions when it was on, but I do watch 8 to 10 hours of Dark Shadows a day like it's my job.
Well, it is now. So I am excited because I haven't really watched it. But again, like I said, my mother enjoyed it and would always talk about how fun and spooky it was whenever it would come up. I remember a conversation where it came up where dumb old Johnny Depp was in the new one or whatever, and she was telling me about how great the originals were. And I have enjoyed what we've watched so far a great deal.
I neglected to mention to you that we're going to pretend that the Tim Burton Dark Shadows just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Because, Johnny Depp is
it's gross.
Anyhow.
Moving on.
Come with us, won't you? To June 1966, when Miranda rights had just been established, the U.S. bombed Hanoi and Haiphong, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf premiered, and on the afternoon of June 27th at 4 p.m. Eastern, Dark Shadows premiered on ABC. Our first episode, in a vacant and deadpan opening voiceover, which we will do our best to mimic, but it's going to take some time to perfect.
Practice. My name is Victoria Winter. Every time. I love it.
I have spoiled myself a bit on that, and it doesn't go on forever with, like, eventually other people start doing the thing too. Apparently first as their characters, but then they stop doing the names. Somebody just does the blah, blah, blah.
Well, as long as someone is speaking hauntily at us, I'll be contented.
Victoria Winters is on a train, and she's about to arrive in Collinsport, Maine. Elsewhere, Elizabeth Stoddard stares dramatically out a window.
Oh, I love her. She is glamorous in ways that I think would be lovely to be. Her just entire countenance. I'm real in love with Liz Stoddard.
She's pretty great. She is often dressed fancy in the privacy of her own home and has elegant rich lady updos,
Well,
too much jewelry.
as we find later, she's been shut in and has not left the home for many years. And I aspire to that level of being fancy, but at home.
Oh, for sure. Maybe not the fancy, though. If
Well.
I had been in my house for 18 years and were a rich lady, I would be in a muumuu with no bra.
But with your big old diamonds. That's what I would be.
She's been staring out the window. We see her brother, Roger Collins, pouring a drink angrily and real pinched-faced and mean looking.
Right.
And they snipe at each other for a while they're waiting on Victoria to arrive at their house. Until Roger said, "I'm your brother," I assumed they were romantically involved somehow, but you didn't get
No,
impression.
I felt just sort of that dynamic of like she's the older sibling and he resents that and they're bickering back and forth. I think they saved the inappropriate romantic familial connections for a little later on.
Oh gosh, I want to tell you that thing that I can't.
Oh no. Oh no. I think I figured it out.
No,
So-
you haven't.
No.
Okay,
Oh.
as I said, was only supposed to watch the first 5 and watched the first 260. And I have recently learned an amazing piece of trivia about the show that I really want to tell her. But in order to have a natural reaction on the podcast, I can't tell her yet.
He has been taunting me with quite a bit of trivia.
You're going to love it.
I'm excited. Anyway, so Uncle Roger is like, "I'm your brother, and I should get a say." And she's like, "No, you can't."
Well, the situation is Elizabeth has hired Victoria Winters as a governess for Roger's son. He seems to have no say in the education of his child, which we're kind of like, why is she? Oh, okay. Back on the train, there's an old busybody lady talking to Victoria, and she's talking her ear off about how nobody could possibly want to go to Collinsport. And the train doesn't even stop there normally. So she's going on, and
Victoria's not even paying attention. She gets into her flashback.
Elsewhere in her flashback, where she's expressing concern that someone she's never heard of in a faraway city she's never been to has randomly hired her for a position that she has not applied for. Victoria, I think, looks an awful lot like my mother when she was young, and initially I thought, oh, there's just a resemblance, but then I started to wonder how much of this is because maybe she watched this program as a kid. My mom was born in 1955. The show premiered in 66. And so maybe she just watched it as a youngster and was like, oh, I'm going to do my hair just like that.
There is a picture of your mother that it reminds me very much of that with a very similar hairstyle, and I wouldn't be surprised. I do see a physical resemblance, though.
Please see our Instagram at Ghosts Want You Dead. And
for this side-by-side comparison. We'll take a poll.
So, on the train, although no one ever wants to go to Collinsport, we see there's a mysterious man preparing to exit the train with Victoria. Rebekah recognizes the actor from various mid-'80s crime dramas, I think. What did we decide that we probably know him from?
Well, he was on, his name is Mitchell Ryan, and when I first saw him, I was like, he looks an awful lot like William Shatner. I know it's not William Shatner, but the best I can figure is I know he was in West Wing, which I didn't really watch much of.
I did. It has TV's favorite Scientologist, Elizabeth Moss, and also Morag was real in
Oh, yeah?
West Wing, which I thought was strange, but at her recommendation, I watched it.
Oh,
and
nice.
It was fine.
Well, I ultimately determined that I know him most likely from watching loads of Murder, She Wrote as a child, which I'd enjoyed. Those were my childhood crime dramas, that and Columbo.
Maybe when we run out of Dark Shadows, it can be...
We can watch some old
Murder,
school
She Wrote.
Bitch Detective, as you like to call them, shows.
Bitch Detective is not one show. It is a genre that I am fond of, which is generally British, but not always, where you have a middle-aged lady detective who is mean, and all of her co-workers hate her, but she's the best detective, and she's Bitch Detective. And I watch a lot of those on BritBox and elsewhere. There is no bitch detective here. There's a detective, but he's neither British nor a lady.
No, he's just a creep detective. Well, I'll talk about that later. I have things to say.
It is the 1960s, so all men are creeps.
Yes, this is true. Every person we've seen so far.
Now no men are creeps anymore.
No.
But back in the 60s, yeah. So Victoria and this mysterious man arrive at the train station, and she asks him where she might get a taxi to get into town. And he offers a ride and introduces himself as Burke Devlin.
Dun, dun, dun. Like the devil.
Yeah.
Devlin.
And he becomes even more mysterious when she reveals her destination as Collinwood in Collinsport to work for the Collinses. And they go on to the hotel where Burke warns Victoria to turn around and go back where she came from and pretend she's never heard of this town. And as they're arriving, the hotel clerk recognizes him and is like, "Oh, hey, Burke Devlin, what are you doing back here?" And he's real snippy about it and denies ever having met him, which is strange.
And also straight, like very obvious. Like it's very clear the guy keeps trying to be all chummy, and then he's just like, "No, sir, I do not know your name. Get away from me."
And then while Burke's attention is elsewhere, Victoria asks the hotel man, like, "Oh, do you know him?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, since he was a little kid." And so she's confused as to why. So now from the hotel, we travel over to the Blue Whale, which is the local bar in Collinsport, which is styled kind of like a Chili's or a TGI Fridays.
It does give that vibe.
A bunch of nautical-y things nailed to the wall and lots of ornamental fishnet and such. And I also can see how the Blue Whale, in combination with the coffee shop / restaurant at the hotel that we're about to see, may have been influential on Twin Peaks, as well as this whole show, kind of like spooky little town where a mystery is happening, populated by kooky people.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, and you just know that David Lynch probably poured over this show. It feels very inspirational to that type of genre and his particular brand of weird. That was something I thought well watching the first few episodes, and even the cinematography and things like that, I could see as an influence.
Well, in the Blue Whale, Burke Devlin
Kirk
is
Devlin.
there.
Kirk
And
Devlin.
he's meeting with a guy called Strake, who is our bitch detective. And he's a private investigator that Burke has hired to thoroughly investigate the Collins family, the household, anyone who has anything to do with them. And that's all we get of that for the moment. We go back to the hotel as Victoria's waiting on a taxi to arrive. She goes into the restaurant slash coffee shop to kill time waiting for her taxi. She meets the waitress in the coffee shop, Maggie Evans, who has fun Michelle Williams style blonde bob hair and is like a plucky, sassy waitress. I like her. Becca did not.
I didn't care for it. She calls her a jerk. Just keeps saying it multiple times without explaining it for a good minute, and then finally does. And that is just essentially that once again, she's being told, you should turn around and get out of here. Those people are kooks. This place is weird. Go home while you still can.
And also alludes to the fact that Collinwood, the house Victoria is going to work in, is haunted. But after all that, offers her some free pie and is being generally friendly.
Yeah.
But also, no, don't go where you're going. Victoria is fond of a flashback, so she has another where her New York roommate, Sandy, who sounds an awful lot like Halsey and Maxine. Did I make you watch Maxine? No, or I just made you watch Pearl?
I think I only watched Pearl.
Okay.
I was planning on watching Maxine, and then that never happened, but homework.
Okay. It is fun. You will like it. Kevin Bacon is there and does a ridiculous accent.
Oh, that's fun. I like him.
But in this flashback, Sandy is trying to dissuade Victoria from going to Collinsport, and Victoria tries to rationalize her decision while stumbling over her lines, which is a charming feature of the show because it was a 5 days a week soap opera and they have a lot to get through in any given day. Pretty much everything is done in one take. Yeah. So frequently the actors are saying things wrong and stumbling over their lines or mispronouncing things, and it's not corrected. And I find it very charming.
I enjoy that too.
Back at the Blue Whale, Strake and Burke Devlin are still talking, and Strake reveals to Burke that Elizabeth Stoddard hasn't left Collinwood in 18 years. Meanwhile, Victoria's still in the restaurant, and Maggie's trying to convince her to maybe just stay at the hotel tonight and then go check out the spooky house where you're going to work in the morning, when the ghosts are asleep.
Yeah.
Victoria is not interested, and she goes on out to her taxi, and the score of spooky string tremolos intensifies.
Which, that is one thing. The music is absolutely wonderful in it. I love all of the spooky music.
I also like the music, I will say, as someone who has watched a whole lot of the show. They must have paid the composer by the note because a lot of it is recycled. And, for example, the Blue Whale that we have mentioned is going to be a frequent location. And they have a jukebox where people play their little songs and there's dancing. There are only about 3 songs that the Blue Whale ever plays. Who's like the happy one, the sad one, and then the people are talking, this is just background music one. And those are the 3 songs on that jukebox. More of the Blue Whale later.
Yeah. But the thematic music is lovely. I really enjoy it.
As Victoria is arriving at Collinwood, we see exteriors of the house, which the role of which is played by Seaview Terrace or the Carey Mansion, which is a French Gothic mansion in Newport, Rhode Island. The Carey Mansion today is owned by Jay Leno and his wife Mavis, which I thought was a fun fact. At Collinwood,
In Collinsport.
in Collinsport, where the Collinses live, uh, which is slightly confusing because Elizabeth is a Stoddard. That is her estranged husband's name. So Elizabeth Stoddard dramatically opens the double front doors that are great big double front doors. And to me, was evoking Gary Oldman as Dracula in Bram Stoker's Dracula.
100%.
Early 90s classic. Elizabeth Dracula Stoddard opens the big double doors, and the music gets even spookier as Victoria enters Collinwood. That is it for episode 1.
It was pretty exciting.
In the second episode, Victoria orients us in her opening voiceover, still at Collinwood, atop Widow's Hill.
Widow's Hill.
Mrs. Stoddard asks to see the letter that she sent hiring Victoria, and she's being kind of short as she's telling Victoria that the house is 40 rooms, but some of them are closed off. There's no staff, but for one man to do the heavy work, the rest of it they handle themselves. Before the main title, Victoria explores the drawing room a little more, and we get our sweet theremin theme song, which I was very disappointed to learn is still under copyright because I was going to just record it.
Want a theremin.
In Collinwood, when the double doors open, we're in a very sparse foyer, which there's a staircase, a table, a sideboard, and a clock, and that's about it. But the vibes of the Collinwood sets, which are sets, this is all on ABC sound stages. I get like a high school theater department's version of what a spooky mansion would look like. It's pretty amateurish, but that is also pretty
Charming.
endearing. Yeah. Beyond the foyer, there's another set of double doors into the drawing room, which is the main set where most things go down in the drawing room. Can you describe the drawing room a bit, Rebecca?
Sure. So I know there's all of these portraits hanging of all of the Collinses, just very classically Victorian high back chairs, and just, there's the fire, and
a big portrait looms over a large fireplace. Mrs. Stoddard is explaining that the portrait is her great-great-grandfather, or maybe just great-grandfather. I can't recall. The genealogy is tricky, and we'll have to review a family tree at some point when we meet some more people. But anyway, this portrait is Jeremiah Collins, who founded the town, I guess. And she's serving tea. When Victoria asks, Mrs. Stoddard is reluctant to describe David, the kid that she's been hired to governess. She instead tells Victoria that she and her daughter Carolyn will get along, and they're about the same age. And we cut back to the Blue Whale, where Carolyn is dancing the night away to some swinging 60s tunes. And they're sort of portraying Carolyn as the town slut, because she's dancing with one guy and then every other guy in the bar, while her dreamy boyfriend books on and gets madder and madder. And Burke and Strake are still there observing. So Carolyn's boyfriend is getting more and more jealous of her dancing with every guy in the bar. And she's pretty dismissive of that and continues to dance cuck him as Scrake tells Burke, that's Carolyn Stoddard. That's Joe Haskell, her boyfriend.
Right.
And
Creepy Bitch Detective is sitting there being creepy and objectifying all the young dancing ladies. Like, I like it when they wiggle. And that was disturbing. Thought that was noteworthy.
indeed. But again, 60s. All sides are creepy.
I'm going to keep pointing it out.
But poor long-suffering Joe has had enough and starts a fight with one of Carolyn's many dance partners before Burke kind of ushers them out and tells them they need to get out before the cops turn up. In this exchange, Burke threatens to spank Carolyn, whom he has just met.
Because in the 60s.
He is probably mid to late 40s. She is meant to be about 18 and he's going to spank her. But also, she does not seem opposed to the idea. We will learn Carolyn is a bit boy crazy.
A little bit.
While they're on the way out, Burke tells Joe, take her home and then come back because I need to talk to you. Back at Collinwood, Mrs. Stoddard is showing Victoria the room she'll be staying in and explaining that this was her childhood bedroom. And Victoria inquires, why her for this job, given that they've never met and she did not apply. Elizabeth tells her that someone recommended her to Roger Collins. After saying that someone made this recommendation to Roger, Mrs. Stoddard makes kind of a hasty exit as though she wanted to avoid any further questions. So downstairs, Carolyn storms in and she's pouting and she doesn't want to tell her mother, Mrs. Stoddard, what is wrong. And she goes like, why is it impossible to enjoy myself? And, I can relate, but I know why it's impossible to enjoy myself.
Well, poor Carolyn doesn't.
Well, she eventually explains what happened to her mother, and Mrs. Stoddard comforts her as Carolyn laments living in their gloomy house and how badly she wants to escape, but not with Joe, because she alludes to the fact that her mom has been kind of urging her to marry Joe and get out of there. She's not super interested in doing that, but sometimes she is, but sometimes she isn't. Upstairs, Victoria has continued to explore on her own, and she comes down and wanders outside and out to the cliff overlooking the ocean at Widow's Hill.
Which is both beautiful and very dramatic and perfect theme-wise with everything.
Mm-hmm. And while she's, standing at the cliff's edge, looking out at the ocean, admiring the view, Roger sneaks up on her and surprises her to introduce himself, makes a suicide joke. They have a bit of a conversation where she mentions what Mrs. Stoddard said about how he's responsible for her getting the job because someone recommended her, and he has no idea what she's talking about. Roger welcomes her and warns her that his son is a little shit, which is true.
He's awful. We'll find out. You'll find out if you're watching along.
As they're talking, when Victoria reveals that Burke Devlin arranged for her taxi to the house, Roger freaks out and kind of shakes her a little bit because it's the 60s and you can threaten to spank women you've just met and also put your hands on them. And
shake them on the edge of cliffs.
Cease to care. Victoria is flustered and returns to the main house and walks in on Elizabeth playing a dirge on the piano in the drawing room, and then just mid-song she collapses into sobs. And
That was ridiculous.
Victoria is not interested in finding out what this is about. She just kind of backs away and sneaks upstairs to her room, and that's episode 2.
Well, I mean, wouldn't you? Like, already things are getting just a little melodramatic for Victoria.
Well, with what we know up to this point, yes. In this next episode or the one after that, we'll find out why Victoria is there. Because so far, it doesn't really make sense that you would accept a random job offered by someone you've never met or inquired about employment with. Well, I'm reminded of all those scam texts that you get now. It's like, hi, this is Jenny from XYZ company, and we want to offer you this job, even though we've never spoken to you.
Right.
That is sort of how she came across the job, and it's weird that she would have taken it, but we will learn why later on. On to episode 3. In our opening voiceover, Victoria Winters chimes in to remind us that it's still creepy at Collinwood. We see Roger banging on someone's door, demanding they come out, and yelling at them and calling them a drunken bum.
I wouldn't come out either, though. Like, he's just out causing a ruckus.
Elsewhere, a banging shutter startles Victoria while she's in her room at her desk writing a letter. Carolyn comes in to introduce herself, and also, like everyone else Victoria has met, tries to frighten her away, but she's friendly about it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that going around. Carolyn says that she'll answer any questions that Victoria might have, so she asks who Burke Devlin is. Carolyn doesn't know. However, in trying to determine if she does, she says his name about 50 times. Burke Devlin. Burke Devlin. Burke Devlin. Also, Victoria relates what happened outside on the cliff when she told Roger about this. Carolyn makes excuses and talks about how sweet and wonderful Uncle Roger is, and she seems to want to bone her Uncle Roger.
He overtly wants to bone her Uncle Roger. She was very clear with Victoria about that fact, in so much as she said, if you had to choose between dumb old Joe Haskell and sweet, sexy Uncle Roger, what would you do? And she's like, I wasn't aware that you had the choice. Which is a nice burn.
To be fair to Carolyn, I would also bone her evil Uncle Roger.
I mean, yeah.
Uncle Roger is hot.
Nice.
And evil.
That's the best kind of hot.
Hot because he's evil.
Potato.
And also comes across as pretty obviously homosexual, yes. Which the character is not, but the actor is, and there's a lot of that going on Dark Shadows. Many of the cast are gay dudes. Several of them closeted, but some of them not. Uncle Roger was not. I think he pretty openly had a boyfriend while this show was happening.
That's sweet. Good for Uncle Roger.
So I'm sure Carolyn was very sad.
I'm sure.
But I imagine she found somewhere else to direct her affections. Anyway, back at the Blue Whale, Joe does indeed come back after dropping Carolyn off to talk to Burke, and Burke offers him $2,375, which is the exact amount that Joe needs to buy his own fishing boat. He works for the Collins Fisheries. The Collins family fishing boats and a cannery, and they can sardines.
They own all the sardines.
That is their rich people empire.
I want a sardine empire. Or just some sardines. Sounds good. I love a sardine. I would do fine in that spooky town. Collinsport, Collinswood, Cottonwood. Collins is.
In 2025 money, that $2,375 would be about $23,000.
Yeah,
So that's an awfully fancy fishing boat.
it's a nice fishing boat.
But Burke offers Joe this money if he will spy on and report back to about the Cullens.
And he's like, gosh, mister, I don't know. That's weird. Maybe not.
Then we cut to the hotel restaurant where Roger orders coffee from Maggie and sort of casually asks after her father. He mentions that he might have a buyer for one of his paintings. Eventually, he stops pussyfooting around and says he urgently needs to see her father, which Maggie is apprehensive about, and she rushes him out. But on his way out, he confirms with Maggie that Burke Devlin is back in town and also has a lot of money now. He's rented out the whole top floor and throwing money around. Maggie fondly recalls that Burke used to pose for her father's paintings years ago. Back at Collinwood, Carolyn is leading Vicky on a tour of the house while they puzzle over why sexy Uncle Roger might have reacted to the mention of Burke Devlin, Burke Devlin, Burke Devlin. They say his name a lot. Like, a lot.
A lot. A lot.
Like in Poltergeist 3, where everyone is Carolyn all the time. It's like that, but
Burke Devlin.
Yeah.
Burke Devlin.
During this tour, Carolyn points out a portrait of an ancestor and also seems to have a crush on the painting of her great-great-great-grandfather.
She's just real hot for the Collinsmans. Don't know what that's about. She's like, oh, doesn't he look like my sexy Uncle Roger? And Victoria is just understandably off-put by this, but seemingly not enough. For me, anyway. I don't know. Like, I feel like I would have a much different conversation with Carolyn. But again,
Well,
the 60s? I mean, was incest bigger in the 60s?
You're at your new job.
Sure.
Just meeting people, and this is the boss's daughter.
And she's like, I want to bone my uncle.
Exactly want to be like,
what the hell is wrong with you?
I want to fuck all the men in your family.
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
So I can see why she wouldn't protest too much. While they're having this conversation, prior to this, Carolyn asks if Victoria prefers Victoria or Vicky, and she says either, so they will be interchangeable henceforth. Vicky is sure that she had closed the drawing room door as they went in, but now it's open. And Carolyn kind of dismisses it, but like, oh, that just sort of happens around here. You're going to have to get used to doors doing that sort of stuff. 'Cause ghosts. Back at the hotel, we meet Sam Malloy, who is the manager of the Collins fishing fleet. So, Joe's boss. And he comes in to talk to Roger and tell him that Burt Devlin is back. And now Roger plays it too cool. He is indifferent, and it's just like, oh, well, we used to be friends. Maybe we'll be friends again. That's cool. But also in this conversation gives a bit of exposition about how Burke Devlin is an ex-convict. So what could that be about? Back over at the Blue Whale, Burke is talking to Strake, now on the telephone, and thanking him for his report on the Collinses. And then Bert goes back to the table and is still trying to talk Joe into spying for him, but he doesn't bite. Right there, the fishing boat doesn't bite, and they're funny. During this conversation, Malloy comes into the Blue Whale and greets Burke kind of standoffishly.
Sure.
He tells Joe that he needs to go home because he has an early day, and so Joe makes his exit.
Well, and I feel like it's very clear that he doesn't trust Burke and whatever he's up to, you know.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that, but Malloy is suspicious of why Burke is there and what motivated it. He hasn't been seen in town for 10 years, and why now? So they have a pretty tense conversation, and Malloy is basically like, you should just go and stay away from the Collinses in Collinsport at Collinwood. Back at Collinwood, Carolyn walks Vicky back up to her room, and Vicky is surprised to find the letter that she had been writing earlier. She put in the desk drawer when she left the room, but now it's on the bed. So after the thing with the door, Vicky is clearly thinking ghosts, but I get the impression Carolyn is like, no, that's just that little shit David.
Creepy little David. Yeah.
And we get another spooky theremin flourish. That's episode 3. Moving on to episode 4, once again in voiceover, Victoria Winters reiterates that it's creepy at Collinwood.
Super creepy.
And the wind is rattling her shutters and she's frightened. She goes back to reading her book, but is further startled by the sound of a slamming door. So she abandons her book. She's brushing her hair, getting ready for bed, and she hears someone creeping outside the door as the spooky string tremolos intensify. Listening through the door, Vicky hears that it was Roger creeping in the hallway, and Elizabeth catches him in the act and scolds him and sends him away.
Well, and I think
She locks her door.
I think she thinks that he's being pervy.
Yeah, that is clearly her impression. And I mean, that makes sense, I guess, if you find a dude creeping outside Manny's door. Right. But yeah, Elizabeth warns Roger away downstairs and says, stop creeping on the governess. But
meanwhile, Carolyn is like, I wish my uncle would creep on me.
Roger reveals that Bert Devlin is back in town, and that he got off the same train with Victoria, and that he's rich now, and that there was something between Burke and Roger 10 years ago. What could it be?
Your boyfriend's back and you're gonna be in trouble, Uncle Roger.
Carolyn overhears this and asks if Burke Devlin is the reason for their argument. Roger calls Carolyn kitten, which I think is gross.
I like to call men kitten or cookie as a way to emasculate them. That's my move. Anyway, moving on. But sweetly, like to gently emasculate. Lovingly, tenderly. Kitten.
Anyway, Roger asks Carolyn to summon Victoria to the drawing room so he can question her about this, and he insists that either she's coming down or he's going up there after her, and it's the middle of the night at this point. Roger and Elizabeth argue about it, but then Elizabeth suddenly and inexplicably is just like, okay, whatever, do what you want, even though I was real insistent that you didn't a few seconds ago.
She did just sort of let the air out of her balloon about it. Like, it was like, fine, I'm done, I'm tired. I feel like they're a soul connection to Elizabeth's daughter. There just is a vibe there of just being generally done with everybody's business.
He is kind of all bark and no bite.
Yeah.
It's real head up about something for a couple of minutes, but then gives up pretty quickly.
Well, fair. Can relate.
Maybe it's just an old lady thing.
Probably. At some point, you're just like, do what you will, buddy. Kitten.
Anyhow, Carolyn does as Uncle Roger asks and goes up to fetch Vicky while Roger and Liz are still fighting downstairs. while Carolyn is telling Vicky that she needs to go down there, she does try and endear her to Roger a bit by giving some of his tragic backstory, like, oh, his wife is gone and his child is terrible and things are rough for Uncle Roger and you should be nice to him. Just generally makes excuses for his bad behavior. And Vicky is reluctant to go downstairs late at night, but Carolyn talks her into it. So Vicky comes down to join Roger and Liz in the drawing room.
Meanwhile, Carolyn has been sent to bed, and she's like, I wish I could go have brandy with Uncle Roger, but she's got to go to bed. Anyway,
Carolyn is, by the way, Carolyn is like the Marilyn Munster of Colin's family, and she's like a happy-go-lucky blonde teenager in this spooky family. But she's meant to be about 18, but it's her bedtime.
Yes. Don't worry. Go to bed, kitten, or else you'll get a spanking, because it's 1964.
Vicky comes in, and Roger and Liz grill her about Burke Devlin. She explains, oh, we just met at the train station, and he drove me into town to the hotel to catch a taxi out here. Roger continues to give the third degree despite Liz's protest. Again, Liz is insistent, like, knock it off, but then just goes to bed.
Yeah.
He's like, okay.
And leaves this
your own
girl alone with sexy Uncle Roger, angry Uncle Roger.
Well,
leaves her alone with Uncle Roger, which I feel like
she just suspected trying to creep on her, but now I'll leave you alone downstairs in the middle.
That's what I was saying, is it did seem counterintuitive. But again, she's just over it and done and doesn't have any more fight left. So
now Roger changes tack and tries to charm Vicky and ply her with drink. So he offers her that brandy. She's not interested. She's not thirsty this evening. She does answer his questions and reveals that in their conversation, Burke did seem to not be fond of the Collinses and that he also urged her not to come, just like everyone else she has met.
Yeah.
Roger's questioning intensifies again, and Vicky gets scared, and he's being real paranoid and hostile a little bit, like he's accusing her of something.
Yeah.
And she does eventually stand up for herself. Roger gives up and lets her go on back upstairs as the clock chimes ominously.
It was a generally uncomfortable scene. Like, it gave a very, like, it makes sense as to why she does finally decide, like, I need to get out of here. Like,
well, the straw hasn't broken the
not quite yet.
It's back yet, but it's about to, because now the camera zooms in on Vicky's face as she's sleeping, as she seemingly stirs from a nightmare, and she sits bolt upright, and she hears a distant crying somewhere at the house. So she puts on her robe and goes down to investigate, eventually tracing the sound to the drawing room, where she knocks on the big double doors and the crying stops. And as she's about to go in and check it out, pale figure slowly creeps down the stairs behind her. Is it a ghost? Was it the ghost crying? But no, it's David, her stank-faced new pupil, who pointedly tells her, I hate you. And that's the end of the episode. About that crying ghost, like, I've got questions about that, but we can't talk about it for about another 210 episodes.
Well, we'll get there eventually. Yeah. Figure out why that little Latin ghost and drag is crying.
And we're on to episode 5 in voiceover. Victoria Winters reminds us that, hey, did you know it's creepy down at Collinwood in Collinsport, where the Collinses live. We see Victoria in her room packing her things.
She's done.
David, hating her, seals the deal, and she's ready to go. But Carolyn checks in, is surprised even though everyone, including Carolyn, has been telling her, like, no, dude, get out of here, it's no home news. But now Carolyn's mad about it and is encouraging her to stay.
We were going to be friends.
Charmingly stumbling over her lines while doing so. And while this is happening, we see David creeping around somewhere to a spooky theremin flourish. Later, he sneaks into Vicky's room and randomly just goes, "Mother, Mother." We don't know what that's about.
Oh, it's bonkers.
We don't find out. But then he vandalizes Vicky's luggage. It's monogrammed with a VW for Victoria Winters, which he tears off. While this is happening downstairs, Vicky is relating her off-putting introduction to David. Roger being so freaked out by the idea of Burt Devlin, and how weird and accusatory he was about it, and about the scary ghost sobbing she heard in the night, explaining to Carolyn why she wants to leave. And while this is happening, Roger comes in just all sunshine and rainbows. Oh, good morning, Crickle. Everything's great. And he delivers a letter to Vicky. He apologizes for his behavior the previous evening and also threatens suicide. He doesn't accept that apology. So Roger's a weirdo.
He is a strange, sad man.
When he hears about the mysterious crying, he suggests that it must have been a dream, and Carolyn agrees. They seem to maybe convince Vicky of this. Back upstairs, we see David starting to pack Vicky's things for her, but he's doing a real bad job and just kind of
Stuffing it all in there
on top of the suitcase. In the kitchen, Carolyn is still begging Vicky to stay. In doing this, Vicky reveals her the Foundland home, which she's going to mention every episode in perpetuity. Turns out she worked in and was also raised as an orphan in a foundling home in New York. She was dropped off in a cardboard box with a note reading, "Her name is Victoria. I cannot take care of her." The foundling home gave her the surname of Winters because she was dropped off in a cardboard box on the stoop in the winter, which just makes it sadder. She goes on to explain that the reason she's come to Collinsport to work at Collinwood, where the Collinses live, is because a mysterious person has been, for 18 years, sending $50 a month to the foundling home to cover Victoria's upkeep. Now, in 1966-ish, $50 a month is about $500 a month. But this money originates via postmark from Bangor, Maine, with Bangor, I hardly know. Bangor is about 50 miles away, and she's searching for the identity of her family, and she figures if she takes this job close by, that'll give her opportunity to investigate.
Yeah.
And after this conversation, Vicky heads out to the cliff overlooking the ocean again, saying that she wanted to take in the view one more time before she flees back to New York. And wouldn't you know it, once again, she's surprised by a mysterious man on the cliff, and he's warning her to go home and is awfully curious about where Roger might be. He asks her to tell Roger that Sam is looking for him, but he's doing it in such a pretentious, annoying way and like he's trying to scare her. He tells of Josette Collins, who jumped from this very cliff many years ago. He says her sobs can still be heard. Ooh, spooky ghost. Vicky is dismissive of this, but Sam insists that, oh no, that house is totally haunted.
Right.
For real, are ghosts there. Back in the kitchen, Carolyn is ironing, probably something for Uncle Roger. I bet she smelled it for... Vicky comes in and asks about the fact that Elizabeth hasn't left the house for 18 years. She had heard this somewhere and is curious. Carolyn says that, well, her dad left a couple of months before Carolyn was born, and Elizabeth was heartbroken and waited for him at home. Tries to explain it away. After they're done talking and Vicky goes up to finish packing, Carolyn rushes after her, suggesting there might be a connection to her dad leaving 18 years ago and that $50 a month beginning to arrive at the foundling home 18 years ago. At this point, what do you think is going on?
Sure. I mean, I think it's relatively clear that it's insinuating that she is a Collinses of some variety, that Elizabeth knows that perhaps she is Elizabeth's daughter, or that basically, you know.
I got the same impression that, like, oh, Liz is totally her mom.
Yeah. My name is Victoria.
And maybe Roger is her dad.
Right. Her name is Victoria Winters. She's a spooky baby.
We won't get any answers about that or anything for a long time, as Rebekah kind of encountered when we were watching these first few episodes. The pacing takes some getting used to if you're not a regular soap opera viewer. Sure. Aired in 20-minute episodes Monday through Friday.
Right.
And so basically the formula is 4 episodes worth of cliffhangers and then something happens on Friday.
Right.
And so Becca was shocked that it's episode 5 and we're still on the first evening. It's like that's happening in real time.
Well, it was episode 5 was when we finally had the next day.
Yeah, it's the next
morning. So we had 4 episodes of just the longest night, and it did feel, I kept thinking that it was going to wrap it up, and no, it was just a long night in Collinsport at Collinswood with the Collinses.
Upstairs, when Vicky gets back to her room, she discovers David trashing her room like he's a rock star in a hotel and just throwing shit around and tearing things up, and also still kind of packing her things. When she comes in, he has the note that was left in her little orphan basket when she was a baby, and he's reading it tauntingly at her over and over again, and she demands he return it, and he does, but he crumples it up and throws it at her because he's a little shit.
Yeah.
He claims he's only being a little shit because ghosts told him to.
The widow.
Ghosts want her out of this house. And then he storms out. After this scene, Carolyn comes in, and without much persuasion on her part, now Vicky just decides to stay.
Well, I think that was just because she, even though she hates that little child and Uncle Roger is upsetting and all of those factors aside, even from the very first episode, she insinuates that she has been wanting to know and understand about her past, her very mysterious past. She even, I think we forgot to mention this, but in the first episode, she does say in that flashback with the Orphan Marm or whatever. Yeah.
Putting your name up to remind me to put that on our band name list.
So she's talking to Orphan Marm. And she asks the Orphan Marm, could this have anything to do with it or something like that? She goes, it is awfully close to Bangor, which is how I say Bangor, Maine. And I feel like I'm saying it wrong. I'm doing that thing where I accent wrong words.
Different ways, so I don't know if it's Bangor or Banger. They say Banger a lot on the show.
Sure.
That's how I've been saying it.
She is, from the very first episode, curious, and I think that's why she takes the weird job and why she ultimately, in the last episode that we watched, decides to stay, is it can't be coincidence. It's fate. So
Fair enough. Well, that concludes episode 5. What are your general impressions after we've finished this first week of Dark Shadows?
I am curious to see it expand and explore more. But I really enjoyed it. I think my favorite characters so far, I do enjoy Uncle Roger, sexy Uncle Roger. And Elizabeth Stoddard is amazing. Like I've said, she's pretty great. What are your impressions? I know you've watched 1,000 of them already.
Clearly I don't care much for it because I've watched 260 of them in like 8 days. But pro tip, anybody who wants to watch, the full series is available on Tubi right now. If that changes, it's also available on the Internet Archive. But I've been watching on Tubi because the download on the Internet Archive is like 2 terabytes and I don't have space to put it anywhere. But on Tubi, if you watch on a mobile device, you can watch at 1.5 times speed. So that accounts for some of my watching way too much of it, although the bulk of that is just that's what I do from the time I wake until the time I go to bed. One thing I will say about the show, because it's very limited in terms of sets, like everything is happening either at Collinwood in the drawing room or sometimes the kitchen or someone's bedroom, but mostly the drawing room. If we're not there, we're at the Blue Whale or we're at the restaurant in the hotel. Once you learn the voices of the characters, you don't really need to look at it all that much. It functions pretty well as a sort of audio drama radio play thing. So some of these hundreds of episodes I've watched, I haven't really been watching all that closely, but I've had on while I'm cooking or doing dishes or something. But yeah, I'm totally bought in. I love it. I want to watch it all the time. And I'm so frustrated that you haven't watched as much as I have because I really want to talk to you about things that happen 200 episodes from now.
Well, I will try to get on catching up and let it swallow me whole.
That's for the best, because you could think about your life and the real world and current events and how terrible everything is and how we're doomed. Or you could just go to lovely Collinsport and visit with your friends, which is what I have chosen to do. But no, I'm real into it. It is tamer than I would like, just by nature of having been produced in the 60s. Disregarding the Tim Burton nonsense, I would love a gritty Dark Shadow reboot where like
that would be pretty great.
They swear and they're fucking. The gay people are allowed to be gay rather than just subtextually gay. I think that about does it for now. So we'll be back in a week and talk more about 5 more episodes of Dark Shadows.
Thank you and goodbye.